Yeah. Hey. 3-point firefighter, always ready for more. Saving citizens and leaving egos at the door. Another day up in the life, showing you what it takes. Got the hunger, pride, drive, spirit that never breaks. Yeah. Always there when danger is threatening. When seconds count, guess what? We're counting the seconds. 3-point firefighter. 3-point firefighter. Hey, IGAF.
So welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Tonight's guest is a friend of mine. I met him earlier in the year, teaching with him. Fantastic firefighter, fantastic instructor, Erich Roden. Now, Erich is a 29-year veteran of the fire service. He retired from Milwaukee as a, you were a deputy chief?
Correct.
Of operations. And then you've been part of all kinds of educational advisory boards. You've been part of FSRI. The best part, one I thought was so cool when I learned this, was editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue and was it Urban Firefighting?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Urban Firefighter magazine, yep.
Magazine, yes. And I know there's so much more to your career. Can you fill in a few blanks of stuff I missed? Because I remember when we talked in Valpo, you had a lot more stuff.
Yeah, I've been around. I lived a very charmed career. I like to say I've been fortunate to live the life of 10 firefighters. That's just by sheer luck and happenstance, and it's definitely not lost on me. It's been a phenomenal journey. I'm still on it, and I'm going to do it till I'm dead, I think. So, I've been a firefighter for a while. I started right out of high school and started as a volley, kind of the same rite of passage most people watching this followed, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Worked for a small department just north of Phoenix, Arizona. Came to Wisconsin to visit my father, took a test for a suburb here, got hired, and moved up here. And that consolidated with another bunch of fire departments. And I worked there for about 6-7 years, and finally got my ride into the Milwaukee Fire Academy. And I've been there. I retired from Milwaukee in 2023. Took a year off, helped run the family biz for a little while, and took a job just south of Milwaukee in Caledonia, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. It's a phenomenal fire department in Racine County, which is the county south of us. And they had a kind of a long-term vacancy in their training division. And we're kind of looking for a set of outside eyes to take a look at their training and professional development. And I applied for the job. They offered it to me. I couldn't say no. It's a phenomenal organization. It's 50 of the best firefighters I've ever worked with, the best paramedics by far I've ever seen in my life. Oh my God, they're essentially doctors on ambulances with everything they can do. They are, they're professionals. There were no internal issues, nothing. It's definitely a great place to work, and they're 50 of the firefighters everyone watching this should want on their department. So very lucky, very easy to train these guys. They were way, way ahead of where I thought firefighters would be in a 50-person organization. And just professionals through and through. They train all day long. They train on Sundays. Again, train on Sunday, win on Monday, right? And they get after it. Very, very aggressive firefighters. They have the right toys. They have the right equipment, and they get it done. We have similar staffing issues a lot of other departments have. Obviously, I came from the city where we can interlock arms and stomp the fire out with the people we had. And now they have to, you're waiting for help. But you know what, I'm confident they can get it done until the help arrives, and very capable. So I'm enjoying that, and love being there. I have a phenomenal chief, Walter Leininger, and doesn't say no to me. We started a regional fire academy with 3 of the other fire departments, professional fire departments in the county. It's a full-time job. We don't have any pay on call or volunteers. So, I get these guys 24/7, and, they're turning me into a killer. So I'm very, very lucky and very fortunate to work for them.
So it's been a while since you saw me, like I said, about 6-7 months, maybe, I don't know. But I know your first thought is, wow, he's even more yoked as fuck than the last time I saw him. So I just want to get that out of the way because I know it can be uncomfortable. You can't focus on the topics because, I'm wearing a large t-shirt. So yeah.
I mean, how often are you buying shirts? I mean,
God, man, if I raise my hand too quick, yeah, I fucked that shirt up.
Yeah.
I know. So we were chatting, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I'd made a post on Facebook, and the post is easily read as me being angry. And I guess there was a tinge of that, but most of it was passion. So, and then you responded and talked to me. We were texting about it, and the post was, I actually got it up here. I found it. So I'm gonna tell you the post, and then we're gonna kind of talk about how it related to what we were talking about. And I said I'd been over on old TikTok replying to some comments of a video that I am in teaching hose advancing. So after looking at the negatives and the stupid comments being made, and just looking at the profiles, I've come to a conclusion. I am sick and tired of new firefighters trying to be old firefighters. Now, for me, and there was more there too. I think I cursed everybody at some point, but um, I I feel like I can say that because I have been a new firefighter. I've been a new firefighter that thought he was an old firefighter. And I'm officially an old ass firefighter. Um, do you think? First off, do you see that in today's culture? Do you see older firefighters wanting to be new firefighters? What do they call them? 220s? 2 years on, 20-year experience.
Uh, a 2-year veteran, kind of we would call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a year and a cup of coffee's time on the job. But I'm sure I had a little bit of that in me. Like I said, I had a little bit of experience when I came to the Milwaukee Fire Department, and at the time, I started, we had a lot of the Vietnam veterans that were still working and retiring, and had some had 40 years in the joint, and the amount of experience these guys had, and you see it right away, and you realize I'm not even going to tell them what fire certifications I have, because I don't want them to think I'm a know-it-all or anything like that. And and I was a driver at my old job, and I had a lot of experience doing that, but they didn't even let you look at the steering wheel when I started, and it was for that very reason. They wanted you to learn your job and not learn your place. I mean, it's not that old school, but a lot of red-nosed Germans that kind of ran the place back in the day were very, very open about when you should, I guess, when you should opine, when you should interject. And first you had to prove it. You would get a zillion fires under your belt with these guys, and then you had get some time on the nozzle when you finally they felt comfortable with that. And I had some guys say, "Well, when you're top pay, I want to hear what you have to say," right? And but that's just how it was. I mean, it doesn't mean that your opinion doesn't matter. I'm kind of a just culture guy, and I think everyone from junior firefighter on up has a good opinion, has something to say, but definitely there's a time when your empiricism and your expertise need to kind of lead the way versus what you type on an internet comment or a post comment or something like that. And you kind of play your hand too, right, when you do that, because you can kind of show your lack of experience and your lack of oversight. And I think I've said this before on the podcast, but when you're a firefighter, it's all funny. When you're a boss, half it's funny. When you're a chief, none of it's funny. So when you get upset that the chief pulled everyone out of the building, or the chief kind of held people at the door until things were kind of set in place, or some gaps were filled before you guys committed to an interior attack. A lot of what we're seeing, whether it's in the the academics, the conference world, the magazine world, et cetera, you can get kind of lost into what aggressive means. You can get lost into what professionalism means, et cetera, and you kind of develop your own interpretation. I mean, and everyone has their own notion and ideology of what the fire service should be. I have it, you have it, the 2-year veteran has it, and when those paths cross, sometimes there's a lack of patience and a lack of understanding, and just a lack of epistemic knowledge of the fire department, your fire department, and the fire service as a total. I mean, we could pull out all the Kyle Wilson line of duty death reports. We could pull out, listen to that radio transmission of that kid calling a Mayday, and what we learned from that fire, and what we learned from training fires where we lost people even. We see some of those same comments during trainings, right? Like this was a weak training. This is a live fire. We should be aggressive in doing this stuff, but we kill people in training as much as we do in real fires. So sometimes it maybe you slow your roll a little bit, get some experience under your belt, work with experienced guys and girls, and then then maybe once they start asking for your opinion, then start giving it. But if it's helpful, by all means, give it. If it's trolling something you see on TikTok or Instagram or something like that, then maybe do some introspection and kind of see how is this going to be received, and am I the guy to make that comment?
It's tough because like everything that I learned, or like when I came on, there was no internet, obviously, right? We had American Heat videos. You remember how high quality those things were. But everything seemed to be New York, Boston, LA, Chicago, and not everything they do equates to us. So it was sort of, I don't remember too much 2-year salts, running their mouth too much because there wasn't the internet. There wasn't all these conferences you have now. There wasn't all these micro conferences you have now to where these guys can go for a weekend and build up an attitude, come back. And just 3 days ago, they were listening to their senior man. Now they're berating their senior man because they learned the baseball bat swing with a fucking Halligan, right?
Sure.
And I've seen that. And I've also seen on the other side of that coin are the humble people, the people that go, and to your point earlier, if asked, they will show what, hey, this is what I learned, but they don't come back from a conference like they're the shit. So I've seen a lot of it, and I've formulated a long time ago an opinion of mine, and mine was at 5 years, that's the firefighter you're probably going to be. So that first 5 years to me is extremely critical. For me, now, hopefully, I'd like to think I was wrong when it came to me, because 5 years, I was kind of an asshole, right? I'd already been in the military as a firefighter. Now I was at Lexington, and I was with a really busy department, busy station. So I felt like I was above it all, and I was humbled very quickly. So that's, to me, I'm that white noise on the bell curve on one side, and on the other side, you got the humble, wonderful firefighter that does everything they're supposed to do, and they have a great career. I had so many stumbles that I had to really make up time. So out of 30 years of being a firefighter, I probably have 20 years experience, honestly, because of my ego and my own problems. But again, I feel like that gives me an allowance to say these things, right? Because I've been there. I've been at that place. Did you ever have big, large stumbling blocks in your career, or do you think they were just basic natural ebb and flow of the stuff?
Well, yeah, it sounds like you and I kind of paralleled our experience with what you said, but no,
Great firefighters normally do.
Yeah, but like when FDIC, moved to Indianapolis, I think it was 95, 96, I think, and they were doing all the hands-on was in the parking lot of the old convention center, and I remember coming back from FDIC and just being like angry that my department wasn't doing this. And I can't believe you think you're behind, right? Because you're with, back then, I'm going to name drop here, like, my mentor, Andy Fredericks, and Bob Pressler, Ray McCormick, and Bob Morris, and Mike Lombardo. I mean, all the heavy hitters that we all still idolize. And you just realize, man, I didn't know what I didn't know. And now that I know it, I'm pissed. I wasn't taught it, and my senior firefighters don't know it. It doesn't mean they're terrible or whatnot. I mean, my job, especially in Milwaukee, a fire engineering magazine back in the day on the back of a toilet was rare. Especially if you worked in a busy company. I mean, I worked when I was a firefighter in Engine 13. That's one of the busiest engines in the Midwest, if not the busiest. I think they're doing like 6,500 runs. It's insane what they're doing. But the senior man, John Savorius, there was just this crazy old salty guy, and crazy in a good way. Never wore a hood, because back then it wasn't required to wear a hood. Everyone in the engine wore it, no one in the truck did. And He never wore a hood. And I'd be turtling. I'd be in my flaps like this, backing him up. And he'd be like this with his helmet on, on the nozzle. And I'm just thinking, man, I'll never be this hard in my life, But I remember, other firefighters like him, the senior firefighters in the company, talking to me about, what's going on in the fire service and this and that. And I was like, man, they really don't know what New York or Boston or these other departments are doing. And I remember reading a fire engineering in the day room one day, and, one of the guys looks down and says, what, you don't get enough work here? Why are you reading that? And it's like, oh, well, actually, I was a little off put by it. I understood what he meant, but, that was kind of like the culture. And so that's kind of what, parallels every other department. I don't care how big it is. You come back from a conference and everyone knows you spent 10 days at FDIC and $1 million, and, you come back and they're just waiting for you to say, hey, I learned this new, let's go out, on our, bang the tools on our door on the apparatus floor for a little while. Let me show you guys this. And they're like, oh my God, this guy, but, to validate your point, firefighters are getting better 10 times faster than you and I did, for sure. I have a very young training cadre in the academy that I'm running down by me. And I'm thinking, man, when I ran the fire academy in Milwaukee back in the day, I would have killed for these guys. I mean, these guys they know so much more than a lot of the guys that I grew up learning from. And they have anywhere from 5 to 7 years on, if not less. And they're just good because these guys go to every conference and they're reading every trade magazine. And so, I wipe the tears away when I talk to these guys, because I always dreamed of working with these types of guys. Right. And I was one of those guys when I was young. Obviously I've been in the trade magazine world conference world for a very long time. So, I mean, the fire service is definitely writing itself in terms of the, getting that information. And I'm not going to sound like an old guy, but with the advent of the internet, I mean, the fire service just exponentially grew in terms of greatness, overnight. And when FDIC, hit it big, especially in its heyday, when, everyone hated the 51 weeks of the year that until the next FDIC,
right.
And, so, I mean, I guess maybe to close the loop on this topic, I think maybe we need to start listening a little bit more of the 2 or 3, maybe not the 2-year veteran, but maybe the 3-year veteran. Right. And, finding out what they know, hey, where are you going these days? Are you going to firemanship? Are you going to, the Water on the Fire conference? Are you going to FDIC, or, what do you read and stuff like that? And I think maybe a little bit they feel like their intelligence gets insulted when they're, when a 30-year veteran who's maybe not that aware of the current goings on is leading a training. You're thinking, man, I know 15 different ways to do this better. And it's hard not to open your mouth and say something like that. But conversely, that 30-year guy is, has some experience under his belt and might say, yeah, that's cute, doing that, or, that tool you have is really cute, but, it's not going to work in this situation and whatnot. So, maybe, listen to me, hear me now, believe me later kind of thing. And, no, I have no, I mean, I'm not a generationalist or anything like that, but I think the fire service is heading in a much better direction. And, we see a little bit more transients in departments. I mean, we don't have like 30-year guys very often in a lot of departments, especially the smaller ones, obviously.
Yes.
Laterals. I mean, that's for the last 15 years, that's been kind of a growing thing. And,
that was unheard of when I started.
Oh yeah.
If they had that when I started, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have people leaving the Milwaukee Fire Department to go work for another department because, they don't have mandates. As a deputy chief, I was greasing 50 some guys a day on Mandos because our staffing was light, and the kids weren't taking the overtime like us hounds were back in the day, and people were lateraling for better quality of life, and they're not getting hit every week, and it was like a culture shock to me when you'd see, we call them like yellow slips in Milwaukee. That's kind of like a personnel change. If a guy gets a rip or a disciplinary or resigns, you get these yellow slips. So I mean, you'd see maybe a small stack like that in a chief's office. Now they're like that. And it's, and we've reversed that trend. Obviously, things are getting, better up there, quality of life wise in terms of the mandates, but, and they're actually reopening firehouses in Milwaukee. So it's just, definitely, good to see. And we're seeing less of that, but especially in the, in the suburban departments, I mean, you look at how they're recruiting, I mean, I've seen, I printed out a whole bunch of, or not printed out, screenshot a bunch of job announcements from all over the country when they pop up on Facebook, and it says tower ladders, aggressive search tactics, leather helmets, hoodies. I mean, it's like all the things that that these kids want nowadays, and I get it. I mean, I just the fire service is more cultural than it's ever been, and people have a specific culture they're looking for, and that's what we're not used to. And on top of learning 1,000 things faster than we did, it's these younger firefighters are kind of leading the charge.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, I meant to bring this up earlier in a rant. I hate the fucking word aggressive in any fire class. So I don't care what it is. I hate because to me, it's misleading. It's also saying to me, I feel like it's like, well, you're not being aggressive enough. I think it's pretty tacit that our job is aggressive, but to ride the trend, I have submitted a class to FDIC this year. It's an 8-hour hot class called aggressive vital taking for EMS. What do you think? Sound good?
I don't know. It sounds too aggressive. I don't know.
I didn't mean to intimidate you. I feel like I intimidated you.
Yeah, as long as it's aggressive, as long as it's all that's done outside the fire building, right?
Yeah, it's aggressive vitals with Jake Barnes, 8 hours, hot.
Yeah.
Here's how you take a pulse. Okay.
Yeah.
Now wait. 15 seconds.
I mean, we were talking offline before we kicked this off. I mean, there a lot of part they're recruiting with that kind of vernacular, and there are departments. I think if I look back when I'm really gonna date myself here, but positive pressure attack and
right.
Searching with a hose line when that was a thing, and some departments still do it, but that was what we considered non-aggressive. But all that meant, that's inside the fire building stuff. Now the PPA, thank God, that ran its course. It's,
it's back in
they're in the Smithsonian now, but
in FPA 1700, that's one of their things. And when I was in Lexington, we did it.
NFPA is a suggestion, right?
Yeah, well, sorta.
I know.
Yeah, no, but when I was in Lexington, we did that too, where you would, they'd open the door. The fan would already be on, and they would just turn the fan to the door as we went in. Now, with departments that were like if it wasn't balloon frame, if it was your basic, ranch, and you had a guy that knew how to vent outside, it could work. It worked okay. But man, if you had just one guy off their game, you just sat there and watched the house burn the fuck down. To me, it's a very dangerous game.
You definitely knew where the fire was right away. So, I mean, that was the good thing about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a good fire. If you want to find the fire, just kick open the door and let that go for a minute and go, oh, there it is. Yep. But there's so much. We were talking about the culture now in the fire service. I'm not hating it. I like it very much. But I do find the same thing that is fueling these younger generations to take our fire service forward is the same thing. It's causing a problem. So it's both the wind in the sails and it's the anchor on the boat. And that is the divisiveness that some of these aggressive firefighters get, right? So we've already talked about it. You go to these conferences, you learn something cool, something neat, you bring it back when nobody cares about what you brought back, or they don't want to hear it, or they don't want to believe in it, and they think it's bullshit. Then that causes a rift. And then to me, what I've noticed in my experience is the people that go to conferences and like training are on one side, and the people that don't, and they're just riding out their last few years are on the other side. And the side that's the laziest is the side that's got the most experience, should be, and the loudest, and they have the biggest voice. So they're really pushing down these younger guys that are trying to do better and learn this skill. And I've seen it. I personally, my ego years ago, when people would go and do conferences and stuff, I would say, so why you need that? Oh, you don't learn the job. You don't know the job very well, blah, blah, blah. When really what I was saying is I'm jealous that you care about your job this much, that you're going to spend your days off and your own money to go do this. Because at that time, Shitty Jakey, which is what my mom called me, by the way, biggest mistake she ever made in her life, she said. But I should put in a laugh right here, by the way, because that was a quality joke. Yeah. But anyway, but I see that the generational thing can also cause a lot of divisiveness. That's what I'm thinking. Now, you've got some plans in the future for a class. Is it along these kind of lines? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm not going to cop
You
out.
don't have to give too much away. Just a
Yeah.
little tidbit.
So are you talking about an upcoming class I'm doing, or you're talking about a class in general?
You,
Okay.
if you want to share your class in July or
Oh
parts of
yeah.
it.
So I'm closing out the Monday session on the 14th, the firemanship, and I really toyed around with what class I was going to do, and um, obviously like you, I've been we're seeing a lot of what's going on online and seeing some other things around the fire service, and thought, well, I don't think we're in a cultural crisis in the fire service, but I think we're at a point academically and culturally, administratively, where we're really focusing on, based on the fact that our departments are so young. Um, as an aside, I'll throw out a quick metric here. I think just before I retired, I'm going to botch this metric, but um, I'm maybe half making it up, but it's very close. 85% of the Milwaukee Fire Department had less than 8 years on the job, including the officers. And it's
Damn.
almost almost 1,000-person department, right? So you look at the youth, and it's not just endemic to the city of Milwaukee. It's virtually every fire department. The one I work with now, I mean, we're about to lose 400 years of experience in the next 3 to 5 years, and the average firefighter may have 3 to 5 years on. So we have our work cut out for us in terms of officer development, chief officer development, and a lot of that, and that's just what we can give them outside of going to fires. So there's a lot that people are going to have to learn and also moreover figure out for themselves. So that's every town in USA. I mean, you look at the recruitment going on around the country now, and the fact that we're fighting for people. We're lateraling all over the place. We're stealing. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're mandating people left and right, and it's tough to fill the seats. And so we focus mainly on the probationary firefighter, the new firefighter, or else the officer, right? Because those are kind of like the two what we thought were crucial points in people's career. But there's kind of a sect of the fire service that's missing. I think it's that 5 to 10 year guy that we're talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about the guy that's doesn't need the boss over his shoulder the whole time, is going to check the rig out, start the saws in the morning, do all the required stuff, and maybe start and study for the lieutenant exam or the driver's test or something like that. Maybe going to paramedics, whatever it is. But we tend to shift our focus away from that person, and it's not the idle hands kind of mantra, but it's the how does that person develop him or herself, right? Are they pursuing education? Are they going to the classes and conferences we were just talking about? Are they sitting in the recliner, upset that the boss did this or whatever, and it's kind of a forgotten part. So I'm going to talk or speak to that as much as I can, and talk a little. It'll be maybe a culture lecture for the most part, but really focus hard on that individual, because you're at a crossroads, because you're kind of like, that's your fork in the road, right? Where I'm going to go career advancement, and then or stagnate or go the hater route. We all know what the haters are, right? And what that leads into. And I'm going to give a lot of examples, at my old job as to what happens when the people take the ladder route, and how it can destroy a firehouse and almost a department overnight. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's and everybody loves haters. They're fun. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that. The people that jumped and trolled your post.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, haters. Working with haters is contagious. They have contagious personalities, so to speak, right? Where they get all the gossip. They get they have an opinion on things, and boy, they can create that into the group mentality, when groups of haters, especially with transfer policies and stuff, can move around and work with each other. And in Milwaukee, we had hater houses, and I was a captain on an engine on one, and I spoke to that on another podcast, but I'm going to give an in-depth analysis on that story and what happened to that firehouse, and what it did to the job. And people were fired and demoted, and it was a cultural shift in the MFD back in the day, and everybody saw it coming for 20 years. Essentially the house was a pirate ship, and you know, but it was busy. It went to every fire that everyone wanted to go to, and everyone wanted to work there for the activity. And um, but it was full of those forgotten firefighters, those senior firefighters, and chiefs didn't have to worry about them at fires, right? I mean, they were the guys you wanted coming after you, and especially, I mean, chiefs love busy companies because they get it done. And
Mm-hmm.
all I have to say is, hey, I need a line in the exposure, or hey, I need I need you to rip the roof off this place ASAP, and it's going to happen. So you sometimes let stuff slide. You kind of look the other way in a few things, and you just can't do that. But it's usually kind of that time that you start getting seniority, we start falling into that trap, and definitely get lost within an organization until all hell breaks loose. So I'm going to talk a lot about that, and some of the other stuff going out there. I'm talking about all the chief hate we're seeing out on the socials, and
Let's
I
talk
have a
about
couple.
that.
Yeah, I have a couple slides on that, and I know I'm a chief, and none of it's funny, like I said earlier, but and I understand kind of the shock value and entertainment purposes on a lot of these posts. However, they're anonymous pages. I mean, you can figure out who these people are easily, and some of the people have been outed by their own organizations, and essentially they've made about 400 career decisions on their Instagram feed. And you know what? And it's just, I get it, but this is still a profession, and I know the goon culture is real popular and everything like that, but you can get jammed up pretty quick, and there's history's repeating itself with a couple organizations that came out in the early 2000s that kind of got in their own way and kind of became their own departments within departments, and insular group mentality, silo, blah blah blah, use all the buzzwords, and people were losing jobs all over the country, and just for simple shock value and one-upmanship, and hope this gets out to the other organizations so they can see how crazy we are, and how how salty of firemen we are, and the better thans, I kind of called them back in the day, but yeah, we're starting to see resurgence in that, especially on the old Instagram there.
Yeah, it's not helping that when you have people that are kind of big in our culture, big in our the fire service, also responding with that kind of rhetoric,
Mm-hmm.
it only emboldens them even more. They're like, oh well, so and so liked my post, so I'm going to be an asshole in every post.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage everybody to look at the people that make these posts, look at their about page, and for me, on the post we were talking about originally, it was amazing how many 2-year, 3-year people in departments that I would really be surprised make a lot of structure fires commenting. You know, that was kind of blowing me away on that one. That's when I kind of got that in my head that, like, I'm so tired of young guys trying to act like old guys. It just never worked for me. I didn't like it. But I appreciate your time on part 1 here. I'm hoping you'll come back next Monday, wear the same clothes, sit in the same exact place on the couch, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll do the same. And then we'll pick
I'll
up.
tilt my head this way.
Okay, well, that'll be different for them. They'll like that. They'll like that. So I appreciate you being on, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, thanks.
So do you think we fooled them? Do you think they really think that right now when they're listening to this, it's been a full week since we've talked to each other? Or do you think they
That
figured
was a
out
famous
that
set. Remember the Gap Girls skit on Saturday Night Live?
Yes, with
Yes.
Adam Sandler and David
Yeah.
Spade.
So
Yes.
there was they did a a flash forward in the middle of the skit, and who was it? Adam Sandler. I think it was Adam Sandler said, "Oh, we're wearing the same clothes we wore last week," or something like that. And they all almost laughed. It was like an ad lib. It was a great.
So we were talking about a whole lot of culture and a fantastic class, it sounds like, coming up at Firemanship in July. And you and I have talked about this before last week's podcast, telling another little fib about what was it about? Oh, we were talking about the exterior attack into the interior attack, hit it hard from the yard and all that. I'd love to talk to you about that, because it's one of the things, like last episode, I told you how I hate the word aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you did say, though, that you would come to my 8-hour hot at FDIC aggressive vital taking, so you said you'd come. You can't take that back. So that's already recorded. Just saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As long
Well,
as I can wear a backwards hat.
it's got to be curled up too. Just curled up like that. Or flat. I'll take flat. That's pretty hip now, as the kids say. Um, but one of the things is FSRI, UL, UL NIST, UL, and now UL has become, UL's got, offshoot the FSRI, which you're part of. To me, I couldn't be a bigger fan. I always describe it to my students as I always say this: if I was to give you 6 guaranteed winning lottery winning lottery numbers, what would you do? And they all say the same thing: well, I'd cash it in and get the money. Exactly. Well, I'm going to give you the same thing, but for the fire service, and that is go to FSRI, consume everything you can, and try to apply everything that they have to what you do. Right? Some of it may not transfer. I get that. But one of them that got such a bad rap years ago is actually some of the best advice I've ever received as a firefighter, and that is water mapping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And water mapping doesn't start once you're in the building. Water mapping starts when you're outside. If you've got fire blowing out a window, why do we not put water in it? Well, we know that the trick is how you apply that water, right? And if you apply the water right, you use a lot less of it. Not necessarily our goal, but that definitely helps us. But as your captain, like in my opinion, imagine, captain doing a 360 with a tick and fire's venting out. Why couldn't your pipeman throw water the correct way, steady, straight, steep, looking for the sprinkler effect, into that room from outside and then move in? Well, I know a lot of haters on Facebook were like, oh no, we go interior. We go aggressive interior. You're being a pussy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I loved it because people were saying, here's what people were truly saying when they said that stuff. They were saying, oh, I'm an ego-driven firefighter. I don't care about them. I care about me. I want to get my helmet burned. That's what they were truly saying to me. Because a real firefighter is always about them, about the community first, always. Mm-hmm. So tell me about, since you've been part of FSRI and the studies, when that one started to come out and the reaction it was getting, what did you think about that? Where did you see it going? Is it where you thought it'd be now?
I'll try to come up for air given this one, but there's a lot of layers to this answer, actually.
I'm a great interviewer. That's why. Fantastic, yes. Actually.
Yes, absolutely.
My aunt says I'm a good kisser too. So.
Well, you are down there.
Kentucky.
Yes. So anyway, that's a Midwest joke. Sorry, folks. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, I was one of the earliest board members. At it was the Firefighter Safety Research Institute back in the day, and the seminal study obviously was a transitional attack and whatnot. But at the time, this is kind of going on in parallel. Again, FDIC is growing into its heyday. It's still its heyday. I mean, I'm talking about when, it was after the Trade Center and, the nation was rebuilding, and it was just such a, cathartic experience every year to go to FDIC and what you learn. You came back, and again, you were like shaking everyone's neck saying, hey, why aren't we doing this and whatnot? And then, so at that time, and with the advent of the internet, numerous cottage industries were starting to emerge in the fire service. It was the safety, you had the, survivability profiling, you had, we were putting etching the tombstone finally on the positive pressure attack that we were talking about. And there were so many cottage industries around firefighter health and wellness, safety, et cetera. So when this research came out on transitional attack, it was immediately bastardized. You had advocates saying, it'll always work putting water in the windows from the exterior. And that wasn't the case. You always that's not the case. If you move the thing around, like this from the exterior, yeah, you can push fire. If you hold it steep and add it, this is before, about 20 years before almost the water mapping came out. If you stood like a statue, put water steep up at an angle, shoot it down the joist bay or something like that, yeah, you're going to put water everywhere on that fire. That's when it works.
Mhm.
Furthermore, kind of the incorporation of it from the board and a lot of the earlier adopters was, if you can't get your hose line stretched, flake, charged, and placed in operation in that order via the primary means of egress, which is the interior stairs, you've got to do something about that fire before you go in, right? Because we need to get that hose line in there. And like we talked about earlier, offline, I vividly remember numerous fires where I'm waiting for the truck to get the door forced, and on the exterior of a building, and I have fire blowing out through windows over my head. I'm underneath the windowsill, waiting, off to the side with my engine company, my nozzle team, and this fire's just continuing to grow and blow over our heads. The truck's having a hard time with the door, and like I said, the door's here, the window's here, 9 to 10 inches maybe, and the fire doesn't know that water's being applied here or here, right? But we were so ingrained and conditioned to say absolutely not. It has to be through the doorway via the interior stairs, because we need to protect the stairs, right?
Mhm.
That's all true, but we're protecting the stairs by putting the goddamn fire out. If we're having a problem with the door, or we have access or issues, right? So that kind of caused one of the causes of the fire service civil war back in the day.
I love
And
that term, by the way.
oh yeah, and it was. I mean, Ray's speech was the watershed. He was like Abe Lincoln, up there giving his address about, and he was right about everything, but the research was also right, and he wasn't speaking to or being a contrarian to that research. He was going after the cottage industries that were bastardizing all this stuff and saying, we're never going to go in, we're not going to search until the fire's been put out from the exterior. And none of the fire departments that I work for or around me were doing that, but several departments were. So it just kind of just metastasized across the fire service, and obviously people went on the attack with Ray and similar types, and but that's not what the research and the data are correct. I mean, it was the fastest water on the fire made everything better. And I remember Andy Fredericks back in the mid 90s would say, put the fire out, everything improves. Put the fire out, you don't have to jump out windows. I mean, I know it, that was kind of a taboo thing to say after the Black Sunday fire, but that was, Andy made shirts that said, if you put the fire out, you don't have to jump out windows. He was actually, the shirts were made to make fun of the RIT class at FDIC.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Andy was a pisser, man. But it was like, but that's where we were at. And then we just bastardized that whole study, and you all got a bad rap for that. And then it was the hit it from the yard came out, and it kind of became like its own movement, right? And so this is all going on simultaneously, and just like the fire service does, it writes itself after a while, and now people don't think about it. In Milwaukee, it was in our books. If you can't get the hose line, to the primary means of egress, take care of the fire. If there's any issues or a delay in, starting the search or something like that, get water on the fire. So I think it's being applied the right way. Are there departments that are doing it the wrong way? Of course. There's fire departments that suck at search. There's departments that just suck at firefighting, period. So, and firefighters that suck at firefighting. We all do once in a while, I guess. But as a collective, I think we've we're starting to apply this a lot more pragmatically, and but it's at the same time, we still do stupid stuff. We still don't take care of the fire fast enough, and maybe not incorporate that. And I think that's where we're at now. Is just hey, we didn't get water on that fire fast enough. That's always been the case. I mean,
So that's one of the things I have preached. I have this little speech I give, and I'm going to give it to you. Not that you need to hear it, but all three of my listeners might want to hear it. And the thing about it is, if you, since Ben Franklin to today, there's been nothing but change. We went from horses to fire trucks. We have ticks now. We have radio communications. We have gear that continues to get better. We have helmets get better, masks get better, SCBAs, you name it, we got it. But the one thing that has never changed and never will change is that fast water on the fire makes everything better, no matter what. That won't change. And it's so easy to get lost in an ego culture. For example, vertical vent, right? I don't bash on vertical vent. I really, truly don't. There's a place for it, but it shouldn't be your default setting. My argument would be, what would be better in the situation you're thinking of? Two people on the roof trying to cut a hole, or those same two people looking for people, searching and or moving a line to help? What's going to be better for, little Jimmy in his Spider-Man pajamas face down in his bedroom versus ego-driven default firefighting, which we've all been part of. But once I became training officer and I started going to fires and being outside, that's when my eyes were really opened at the tactics that were being used and done, but not for the victim. They were obviously, people just want to get on the roof and cut a hole and say they did it. And that whole 4x4 bullshit anyway, that's not a real thing. That's just anecdotal evidence that found its way that, 4x4 hole in a roof. We know that now. So that, to me, that's a big problem. But people always want to get mad and, you don't like venting, you don't like trucks. No, I'm just saying what's best for the victim, right? Little Jimmy's Spider-Man pajamas, moving that line, doing a good search. I'm just saying. You said it earlier. You something I never thought in my 30-year career, that the two words I would ever have to think about in the fire service was recruitment and retention. Never. But it is across the country. People cannot keep people. People cannot hire people. And then I got to let this cat out. It's driving me nuts. Give me 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourself. Red China as a rising global power. Go. Get out. Talking Eric Roden. Go. You love his stuff. Sorry, yelling at my cat. Anyway, so yeah, that culture of hit it hard from the yard, to me also was just people wearing that sign that says I'm an idiot. I know nothing of what I'm talking about. Oh, you're going to hit it hard from the yard, be an outside firefighter. Why do you even have gear? Blah, blah, blah. So it's pretty aggravating for me to see that. And of course, I know it's had to be aggravating for you being part of that and seeing it, like you said, bastardized, like they're picking and choosing. You really can't pick and choose science. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, UL never, UL's never said exterior firefighting should be the primary tactic.
Yeah,
you'll see it written in articles, and it was on, the old firehouse.com, forums, if people remember those. I mean, that was the proverbial bloodbath back in the day, and that was before before social media came out. I mean, that's where people went to troll and hate and everything else, and it was like, UL says we can't go in anymore. They never said that, and
right.
And I'm on that board with other big city guys too, and they're not in there saying, yeah, this is going to be great in the FDNY, this is going to be great in Milwaukee, this is going to be great in Chicago, and that never left the lips of any board member or researcher or whatever. But again, we did have some, I don't want to call them safety Nazis, but safety advocates, as they called themselves.
Safety advocate, safety Nazi. Yeah, that's
or
they,
they were part of these advocacy groups and these special interest groups, I'll call them, and they were a bunch of carpetbaggers. They picked up on an aggrieved sector of the population. These people had money and influence in terms of grant money back in the day, and they came out with programs that took this thing a complete different direction, and then people were like, oh yeah, maybe exterior firefighting is what we're supposed to, but that was never the intent. It was never what the data portrayed. It was never in any of the technical reports, et cetera. So, however, if again, like Erich Roden, Captain of Engine 32, is sitting there hunkering down under a window with fire blowing instead of waiting for a truck to finally get the door, I could have taken care of that fire just by reaching up with my nozzleman, put that thing out, darken it down, not put it out, darken it down because you still have to go in and get it. And we would have made the stairs no problem. We would have the truck that finally got the door would have got in there to search and ahead of the hose line, which is what, departments have been doing forever. And, kind of talk about your term aggressive. I've never worked for a fire department that wasn't aggressive. I've never had somebody say we need less aggressive search. Now there were jobs that, again, searched with hose lines and stuff like that. And, that wasn't really, I didn't work for an organization that did that. So, but the tech colleges that I teach at were teaching that. And obviously you teach it in case a department does it, but no one's going to do it. It's like why we teach ropes and knots in Firefighter 1 classes, right? No one's going to tie a figure 8 on a bike to lift a fan up into a window. Come on. But searching with a hose line is the same thing. And, but it's taught that it doesn't mean that is the course of action we take. And, to speak to your point about, the vertical ventilation, when I love searching fire buildings, I will probably I will probably send a truck up to the roof later than most chiefs. In Milwaukee, we went to the roof at tons of fires. I mean, if we had heavy fire blowing out of the attic in a Queen Anne or a 2.5 story German duplex, as we call them, then yeah, you've got to get up there and you've got to get a hole cut, if you're making a push into the attic because it's hot. However, if the fire is venting out the front or rear window in that attic, it has all the ventilation it needs. Mm-hmm. And we've thermocoupled the bejesus out of every type of building at UL, and we can show you how hot it is venting out of that window or how hot it is venting out of the hole. Now, you pop the top and you're in an attic. I've been there where I've been pinned down waiting for the truck to get the roof open. And it is immediate relief. However, it's also immediate relief when you get water on that fire if it's venting out the front window. So you are right. And one thing I will fight to the death on is why we're sending companies to the roof on a ranch. That's a pet peeve of mine. I know they do it a lot out west and a lot of other departments do it. And, I think it's akin to a lot of firefighters arriving on scene and they all want to do something when they get there. Right. So sending someone to the roof is, it's easy to do. It's going to take a few people and people are going to feel, very accomplished because it's quite an operation. It's throwing ladders, it's placing ladders, it's cutting a hole in the roof, it's pulling boards, it's pushing down the ceiling. It's all the above. So it's raw truck work in its purest form. Right. However, we're not venting anything on the roof of a ranch except, maybe the wife's wedding dress and your Christmas decorations. But, so those people are better deployed pulling ceiling from below to get the line up, up into the attic space and searching every room in that place in seconds. Right. It's very, very quick to search a private dwelling. And that's, I think, what our taxpayers and our tactics should be focused on.
Absolutely. When it comes to like vertical ventilation, stuff like that, my experience has been, and it's probably why it's not my favorite, is simply because it hasn't been done coordinated, right? Mm-hmm. If it's done coordinated and you have the resources, meaning you've got people in there searching, you got enough people to move lines, and it is strategically the best thing to do at that moment. Great. But you got to coordinate. You got to be able to communicate. You can't just go up there and cut a hole because that's what you've done every time. Mm-hmm. And that lift is temporary and it's misleading. If you don't have water on the fire or not about to get water on the fire, that ventilation can be misleading. Oh, it's lifting. We've all seen it. We've all been, pushing a hose down the hallway and you hear above you and then you hear them banging it. And after that second or probably third or fourth bang is when they're hitting that drywall. You're like, okay, we're going to get a little bit of lift. And you do. Mm-hmm. But on most houses, you could probably hit the fire from there. But if you do that wrong in a bigger house, a McMansion or something, and you're not coordinated, all you're going to do is give that fire exactly what it wants. Just like my first wife wanting a divorce, giving her exactly what she wants. Right. And I think a horrible, evil fire that destroys lives and equating that to my first wife, I believe that's perfectly sound logic. Fight me on it.
That's logic we can all understand.
Brother, I tell you what, that's exactly right. Now, I have had a blast talking to you. Instant fan the second I met you up in northern Indiana. I don't know if you caught me sneaking watching you teach in that big open bay. You remember that big open bay up there at the Mac? But it was like a free class basically that people pay to come see Erich Roden teach this or keynote this. It was awesome to watch you, and I've loved staying in touch with you. And the other podcasts you've been on, fantastic. You know, I love that I feel like you get what our job is. Our job is spending our whole time learning and sharing. And I think that's I think you're a prime example. Now, we didn't even scratch the surface of what Erich Roden has done in the fire service, mostly because I've been busy making horrible jokes. I say horrible. They're hilarious. I think we both can agree on that. I mean, come on, 8-hour vitals, aggressive
You are
vitals.
one of the wittiest and funniest guys in the fire service. So I think you should probably do an act in the middle here or something like that.
Or an OnlyFans page where I pee in pudding. I'm not saying no yet. Just think about it. I'm just thinking about it. Now, it's at this point in the podcast, I love to ask you, what's the best firehouse prank ever played on you or you played on somebody? But you have a prank that you weren't part of, but is quite possibly the greatest firehouse prank in all of the world for all ever, period, end of story. Do you think you want to share that with us? And you can redact names as needed.
I have to share, Jake. I have to share.
Brother, we need it. We need it.
I have the two best ones, but this one is the better wrist one.
Better wrist, all right.
Oh yeah.
Did you say better ass? What'd you say? Better wrist? Okay, never mind.
So okay, so this one actually went national back in the 80s. I think it was the late 80s that this happened. So this one hit the wire, back when there was no wire, right? And so we have engine 13 and 32 in Milwaukee. You can stand on the roof of each firehouse and see the other one. Arch nemesis. They race to beat each other into fires to this very day, and so it's a friendly rivalry now, but it wasn't back in the day. So engine 13's house moniker is the Bad Boys, and the Bad Boys. And they still are referred to that as this day. They still says it on their shirt. And so one of the guys made a license plate for engine 13 that said Bad Boys. So obviously, they had in that house in 32s, they have the big, the big city, busy engine or busy company swagger, right? As they should. I always enjoyed that swagger, and I had it too when I worked in those companies. And there's nothing wrong with it. However, so the rivalry was pretty bad back then. A lot of fire activity in both those neighborhoods. And at one of the fires, the guys from Engine 32 unscrewed and stole the license plate off 13s that said Bad Boys on it. And so they would send them, this is back when, they had Polaroids. So they would mail Polaroids through department mail to 13s of that license plate in various places all over the world. People would take it on vacations and put it on the beach. People would put it everywhere, and these guys wanted their license plate back, right? So, so rather than just get another license plate, it got ugly. So it became a heated argument between the two firehouses. Give me my effing license plate back. This is, it's not funny anymore. So it got bad, and you know how we are. So, we can't let that go. So it's got to, be pushing and shoving and yelling at each other at fires just because, you're slighting us and this and that. So the rivalry got really bad, to the point where the battalion chief was like, hey, man, you guys need to bury this. This is getting out of hand. It's all over the department. And, it's guys are nose to nose at fires, and it's over a license plate, let me remind you. And
a well-traveled license plate.
Well-traveled license plate. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? But so the captain of 13s calls the captain of 32s and says, hey, we're both working. We're coming over to 32s. Let's have dinner. Let's bury the hatchet. Let's end this stupid rivalry and this and that. We go to the same fires. You're first due to us or vice versa. So you're helping us with our first line and this and that. So, this shouldn't get any worse than it is. So they're like, come on over. We'll talk and see how this goes. So 13s comes over. They're having a nice meal made and everything like that. And so 13s brings donuts as a peace offering and puts them on the table. They're everyone's having a good time. And people are eating donuts, and they're kind of like, yeah, you know what, maybe this got a little out of hand, and you're right. This is, this was dumb. It's like, they're all hugging and kissing each other at that point. And so 13's like, hey, we got to go, or he caught a run or something like that. We got to peace out, but enjoy the donuts, guys, and we'll see you at the fire later tonight. So guys are they're wolfing down donuts, and so they finally get to like the last 3 donuts, and they're like, what? So they look in the box of the donuts, and there was a photograph taped to the bottom of the donut box. And they look at it and they're like, oh my God, it's all the guys from Engine 13 bent over with their pants down around their ankles with donuts in their ass cheeks. That is a true story.
So everything was squashed and everything was better,
everything
right?
was squashed. Yeah. So it was back on real quick after that, but to this day, no one says they ate a donut, right? I didn't. And the ironic thing is everyone involved all retired as chiefs. So,
writing people up for that kind of shit.
So it's like, yeah, it's, that one was great. That one's been hard to top. There's been some worthy attempts, but yeah, that one was, yeah.
Since you've told me that story, I have told it to friends and colleagues. I've got it wrong, and I cannot tell it as good as you. So I'm so glad it is now immortalized with all 7 of my listeners, which 2 of them are cats. You know that already. Yeah. So it's fantastic, brother. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed seeing you again, talking to you. I love hearing that story, and it's just been a blast. And I'm really excited for you in July at Firemanship. What else do you got planned? Where else can people see Erich Roden?
We have a gig in September at the Eau Claire Leadership Conference. It's in Western Wisconsin. Might pop up here and there, a few other places, but I'm slowly getting back out there on the road a little bit more, and life's slowing down a lot more for me to get back out there doing what I miss doing, and hopefully be teaching with you guys pretty soon here when things lighten up at the federal level.
Yes,
get out and be able to steal half your act too. So, because it's a good one. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
For those watching, he's a phenomenal guy. He was one of my, not because he put me on his podcast, but he's one of the most memorable guys I've met in the last 30 years for sure. So you want to teach with him, trust me.
I appreciate the kind words. I do have a good time, and to me, it's always an honor to work with the people I work with. So if I can make them laugh too, even better. Well, brother, thank you for being on. I look forward to seeing you again, and thank you very much.
You got stay safe out there, everybody. We'll see you soon.
All right, brother. Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 35 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.